The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. 100 different species stood watching as the final results of the trial by combat were announced. But they already knew the outcome. The news had spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans had won. Observer Keth, the crystalline being who had served as neutral mediator, read the official report. Final casualties: Vethrani forces, 478. Human forces, 153. The trial by combat has concluded in humanity's favor. High Arbiter Molluth stood rigid with shock and fury. His claws clenched and unclenched at his sides. This was not possible. This was not how it was supposed to end. There must be some mistake, he said. His voice was barely controlled. The humans must have cheated. They must have used forbidden weapons. Ambassador Quan Nuhain stepped forward. He looked tired but satisfied. Observer Keth, perhaps you could clarify the inspection results. The crystalline being's voice rang through the hall. Council inspectors examined all human weapons before and during the trial. Every weapon complied with the treaty terms. No electrical power. No chemical propellants. No energy projection. All weapons were powered by human muscle and mechanical advantage. Then what did they use? Molluth demanded. What magic did they employ? Lieutenant Hana walked to the center of the hall. She carried a display device that projected images into the air for all to see. We used crossbows, she said. The image showed a modern crossbow, its limbs gleaming with carbon fiber. This weapon was invented by humans over 2,000 years ago. It can fire a bolt that penetrates armor at 500 meters. Over the centuries, we refined it, made it stronger, more accurate, more deadly. The image changed to show a longbow. This is a longbow. English archers used weapons like this to destroy armies of armored knights. A skilled archer can fire 12 arrows per minute with enough force to punch through steel plate. Another image. A trebuchet launching a boulder through the sky. This is a siege weapon. Humans used these to knock down castle walls that were considered impenetrable. We improved the design with modern engineering, but kept the basic principle: gravity and leverage. No electronics needed. The watching aliens stared at the images with growing horror. They were seeing human history for the first time. Battles where tens of thousands died. Sieges that lasted years. Wars that destroyed entire civilizations, all fought with wood and steel and stone. You see, Ambassador Quan said, humanity evolved on a dangerous world. We had no natural weapons. No claws, no armor. No venom. If we wanted to survive, we had to create weapons. And we spent 10,000 years making them as deadly as possible. He paused to let that sink in. When the Vethrani challenged us to fight without advanced technology, they thought they were removing our advantages. They did not realize that they were forcing us to use the weapons we know best. The weapons our ancestors developed through centuries of war and death and pain. Molluth looked like he wanted to attack someone, but he controlled himself. The treaty terms must be honored. We accept that humanity has won the trial by combat. Yes, Ambassador Quan said. And now we will discuss new terms for lasting peace. The negotiations lasted 3 days. When they were finished, humanity had secured control of all disputed colonies. The Vethrani agreed to pay reparations for their attacks. And a new clause was added to galactic law. No species could ever again challenge humanity to trial by combat. Captain Yoon did not participate in the negotiations. He had a different task. On Arena 6, a memorial was being constructed. 153 names were carved into a stone pillar. 153 soldiers who had given their lives for this victory. Yoon stood before the memorial with the surviving soldiers gathered around him. Some were bandaged. Some leaned on crutches. All of them wore expressions of grief and pride. They died far from home, Yoon said. They died fighting with weapons that seem primitive compared to the technology we normally use. But there is nothing primitive about courage. There is nothing primitive about sacrifice. He placed a crossbow bolt at the base of the memorial. This weapon helped us win. But the true weapon was always the spirit of the soldiers who used it. The determination to never give up. The willingness to fight against impossible odds. Shin Yuna stepped forward and placed an arrow beside the bolt. Her eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was strong. My grandmother told me stories about our ancestors, warriors who defended our land with bows and swords. I used to think those stories were just history. Now I understand. That courage is still in us. It never went away. One by one, the soldiers came forward to leave something at the memorial. Arrows, bolts, pieces of their weapons. Tokens of respect for their fallen friends. Private Moon Jae-sung was the last. He placed a small stone from his home village in Korea. "We will remember," he said quietly. "Always." As the transport ships prepared to leave Arena 6, Yoon took one final look at the battlefield. The Vethrani had already removed their dead. Only the human memorial remained, standing tall on the ridge where they had made their stand. "Captain," Lieutenant Hana said, approaching him. "Message from Earth Command. They want to know what we should do with the training facilities, the archery ranges, the siege weapon workshops." Yoon thought about it for a long moment. "Keep them open. Train more soldiers in the old ways. We might never need these skills again, but if we do, we should be ready. You think there will be more challenges? Perhaps. The galaxy is watching us now. Some species will be afraid of what we showed them here. Others will be curious. And some," he looked up at the stars, "some will want to test us." Across the galaxy, that was exactly what was happening. Species that had dismissed humanity as weak were now studying human history with intense interest. They watched recordings of the battles on Arena 6. They read about Earth's medieval wars. They learned about the Mongol conquests and the Roman legions and the 1,000-year-old tradition of Japanese swordsmanship. They were beginning to understand something frightening. Humanity had not become dangerous because of their technology. Humanity had always been dangerous. They had spent their entire existence fighting and killing and surviving. Technology had just made them more efficient at what they already did naturally. A Vethrani cultural attache sent a formal request to study at human military academies. It was the first of many such requests from many different species. They wanted to learn the old ways. They wanted to understand how simple weapons could be so deadly in human hands. Captain Yoon approved the requests personally. "Let them learn," he told the council. "We have no secrets. Our strength was never in our weapons. It was in the minds that designed them and the hands that used them." On the last transport ship leaving Arena 6, the soldiers gathered at the windows to watch the planet shrink behind them. Somewhere down there, 153 of their friends rested beneath the memorial stone. A new saying was already spreading through the galaxy. Never challenge a human to fight with simple weapons. They invented most of them. Shin Yuna heard the saying and smiled sadly. It was true. Humans had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war. Every weapon in their arsenal had been created to solve a specific problem. Every tactic had been refined through countless battles. The crossbow, the longbow, the catapult, the trebuchet. These were not primitive tools. They were masterpieces of deadly engineering, developed over centuries and tested in the blood of millions. The Vethrani had wanted a fair fight. They had wanted to face humanity without technology. Instead, they had faced the accumulated killing knowledge of 1,000 generations of human warriors. And they had learned, too late, that there is nothing in the galaxy more dangerous than a human with a weapon they truly understand. The transport ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the survivors home. Behind them, the memorial stood silent on the ridge, guarding the names of those who had proven what humanity could do. The war was over. The peace was won. And across the galaxy, everyone now knew the truth. Never underestimate humanity. They have been preparing for war since before they could write, and they never, ever forget how to fight. The night attacks began on the second evening. Sketh sent his warriors in small groups, approaching from different directions. They moved silently through the darkness, their natural armor blending with the shadows. They were hunters, bred for stealth and killing. They made it within 50 meters of the human lines before the first tripwire snapped. Bells rang through the camp. Soldiers who had been sleeping grabbed their weapons and ran to defensive positions. Fire arrows arced into the sky, illuminating the approaching Vethrani in orange light. Contact! Northern perimeter. Sergeant Major Choi shouted. Crossbow bolts flew through the darkness. Vethrani screamed and fell, but others kept coming, their claws extended, their mandibles clicking with battle fury. 3 Vethrani reached the wall of sharpened stakes. One impaled himself trying to leap over. The other 2 crashed through and found themselves facing a wall of spears. Private Moon Jae-sung thrust his spear forward. The hardened steel tip punched through the Vethrani's throat. The creature fell, gurgling green blood. Beside him, Corporal Han Ji-yeon swung a warhammer at the second Vethrani. The spiked head crushed the alien's skull with a sound like breaking pottery. By morning, 17 more Vethrani were dead. 3 humans had been wounded. One had been killed when a Vethrani claw caught him across the chest. Captain Yoon stood over the body of the fallen soldier. His name had been Lieutenant Kang Woo-jin. He was 25 years old. He had been engaged to be married. "We will mourn later," Yoon said quietly. "Right now we must win." For the next 3 days, the pattern continued. Vethrani attacks came from every direction at random times. Night assaults, dawn raids, afternoon probes. Sketh was testing their defenses, looking for weaknesses. He found none. The humans adjusted to every tactic. When the Vethrani tried to approach through the forest, they found the trees filled with archers who dropped arrows on them from above. When they tried to dig tunnels, they hit buried stakes and wire that rang bells and brought crossbow teams running. On the 4th day, Captain Yoon decided it was time to strike back. "Siege teams," he ordered. "Full bombardment of the enemy camp. Lieutenant Hana, you will lead a night raid. Kill their officers if you can. At minimum, disrupt their rest and destroy their supplies." The trebuchets launched that afternoon. Massive stones flew through the air and crashed into the Vethrani positions. Tents collapsed. Warriors scattered. Then came the firepots, clay containers filled with burning oil that shattered on impact and spread flames everywhere. The Vethrani had never experienced anything like this. They had no word for siege warfare. Their battles had always been decided by claws and teeth in close combat. This long-distance destruction was terrifying and incomprehensible. That night, Lieutenant Hana led 30 soldiers into the darkness. They wore black clothing and carried only knives and garrots. No armor. Nothing that would make noise. They moved like ghosts through the Vethrani camp. Hana found a tent that contained several officers, identifiable by the decorations on their armor. She slipped inside without making a sound. 20 minutes later, she emerged with green blood on her hands and 3 dead Vethrani behind her. Her team killed 11 more before silently retreating. The Vethrani did not discover the dead until morning. By the 5th day, the Vethrani were breaking. Warriors who had never known fear were now looking over their shoulders constantly. They could not sleep without hearing phantom bells. They could not rest without expecting stones to fall from the sky. War leader Sketh knew he was losing. He had started with 490 warriors. He now had less than 200. The humans had lost maybe 30. This cannot be, he growled to his remaining officers. They are soft creatures, weak. How are they defeating us? No one had an answer. Sketh made his decision. If he could not win through tactics, he would win through honor. He would challenge the human leader to single combat. If Sketh won, his warriors would rally. If he lost, he did not intend to lose. He walked alone toward the human lines, carrying a white flag in one claw. It was the universal signal for parley. Captain Yoon met him halfway between the two camps. "You fight well," Sketh admitted. The words clearly hurt him. "For such small creatures, we have had much practice," Yoon replied. "I challenge you to single combat. Just you and me. The winner takes all. Your soldiers are tired. My soldiers are tired. Let us end this quickly." Yoon considered the offer. Sketh was 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor. His claws could cut through metal. In a straight fight, he would tear a human apart in seconds. But Yoon had not come here to fight fairly. "I accept," he said. "But I choose my weapon." "That is your right," Sketh agreed. "What weapon do you choose?" Yoon held up the weapon he had brought with him. It was a pyeongun, a Korean war flail. A long wooden handle with a spiked metal ball attached by a chain. Sketh laughed. "A child's toy." "Very well. We fight at dawn." That night, Yoon practiced with the flail until his arms ached. He had been training with it for 3 months, but Sketh was the most dangerous opponent he had ever faced. Sergeant Major Choi watched him practice. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" "No," Yoon admitted. "But we need this to end. Our soldiers are exhausted. Another week of fighting, and we might start making mistakes. The flail is a good choice. It can reach around his guard. That is the plan. His claws are his primary weapons. He will try to get close and tear me apart. I need to keep him at distance and hit him where his armor is weakest." Dawn came gray and cold. Both armies gathered to watch the duel. The Vethrani on one side, the humans on the other. In the middle, a circle had been drawn in the dirt. Sketh and Yoon entered the circle together. The Vethrani was enormous, towering over the human captain. His claws gleamed in the morning light. His red eyes burned with hate, and wounded pride. Yoon looked small by comparison. Just a man with a wooden stick and a metal ball. But his stance was solid, and his eyes were calm. "Begin," shouted the neutral observer who had been sent by the Galactic Council. Sketh charged immediately, his claws slashing at Yoon's head. Yoon ducked and spun, swinging the flail in a wide arc. The spiked ball caught Sketh on the knee joint where his armor was thinnest. Sketh roared in pain and stumbled. Green blood dripped from the wound. He attacked again, more carefully this time. His claws moved in deadly patterns, forcing Yoon to retreat. One claw caught Yoon's arm and tore through his sleeve, drawing red blood. But Yoon kept moving. He kept the flail spinning, creating a zone of danger that Sketh could not enter safely. Every time the Vethrani tried to close distance, the spiked ball would swing toward his face or his joints. The fight lasted 15 minutes. Both combatants were bleeding. Both were tired. But Sketh was slowing down. He was not used to opponents who could hurt him. He was not used to pain. Yoon saw his opportunity. He faked a stumble, and Sketh lunged forward for the kill. But Yoon had been waiting for exactly that. He sidestepped and brought the flail around in a devastating overhead strike. The spiked ball crashed into the back of Sketh's head, where his armor was thinnest. The Vethrani war leader fell to his knees, green blood pouring from the wound. "Yield," Yoon said. He was breathing hard, but his voice was steady. "Yield, and your warriors may leave with their lives." Sketh looked up at the human who had defeated him. His red eyes were glazed with pain and shock. "Your ancestors," he gasped. "What kind of monsters were they?" Yoon helped him to his feet. "Survivors," he said. "Just like us." Sketh bowed his head in surrender. The watching Bethrani let out a sound of anguish. Their greatest warrior had fallen to this small, soft creature with a stick and a chain. The duel was over. The war was over. But the humans did not celebrate. Not yet. They still had wounded to care for and dead to mourn. They still had a long journey home, and they still had a treaty to negotiate. The transport ships landed on opposite sides of planet Arena 6. It was a beautiful world with green forests, open plains, and rocky hills. The Galactic Council had chosen it specifically for the trial by combat. There were no civilians here, no cities, nothing but nature and two armies that wanted to destroy each other. Captain Yoon stepped off the human transport and surveyed the terrain. His trained eye immediately saw the advantages and disadvantages. The forests would provide cover. The hills would provide high ground. The plains would be killing fields. "All units begin unloading," he ordered. "Siege teams, I want defensive positions established on that ridge within 4 hours. Archer companies, form a perimeter. Infantry, start digging." The 500 human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency. They had trained for 3 months for this moment. They knew their roles perfectly. Lieutenant Hannah stood beside Yoon with a pair of binoculars. She was scanning the Vethrani landing zone 5 kilometers away. "They are not fortifying," she reported. "They are just forming into groups and marching toward us." "Of course they are," Yoon said. "They have never needed fortifications. Their armor protects them. Their claws are their weapons. They have won 100 battles by simply charging and killing. They look confident. They should enjoy that feeling while it lasts." Across the plain, war leader Sketh organized his warriors. He was the largest Vethrani on the field, over 8 feet tall with armor scarred by countless battles. He had personally killed over 200 enemies in his long life. He looked at the human position with contempt. The small pink creatures were digging holes in the ground like insects. They were building wooden structures that looked like children's toys. He saw no weapons that could possibly threaten Vethrani armor. "They are scared," Sketh told his warriors. "They hide in the dirt because they know they cannot face us in open battle. We will tear through their little walls like paper." The Vethrani warriors clacked their claws together in agreement. This would be an easy victory. But Sketh was a cautious leader. He sent 10 scouts ahead to observe the human positions more closely. It was standard procedure. Know your enemy before you attack. The scouts moved quickly through the tall grass. They were trained hunters, skilled at moving without being seen. They got within half a kilometer of the human lines without any problems. Then, Private Moon Jae-sung saw them. Moon was a young soldier, only 22 years old. He had been a deer hunter before joining the military. He knew how to spot movement in wilderness. He knew how to remain perfectly still until the moment to strike. He signaled his squad with hand gestures. 5 human scouts spread out in the grass, invisible to the approaching Vethrani. The lead Vethrani scout never saw the crossbow bolt that killed him. It punched through his chest armor and stopped his heart instantly. He fell without a sound. The other Vethrani stopped in confusion. Where had that come from? They could see nothing. No muzzle flash. No energy signature. Just grass waving in the wind. A second bolt took another scout through the eye. Then a third. Then a fourth. The remaining 6 Vethrani turned to run. Moon and his squad stood up from the grass and fired together. 6 bolts. 6 kills. It was over in seconds. Moon walked to the fallen scouts and examined them. The crossbow bolts had penetrated their armor easily. The Vethrani had thick shells, but they were made of organic material. Carbon fiber bolts with hardened steel tips went through them like needles through cloth. "Contact Captain Yoon," Moon told his team. "Tell him the enemy scouts are down. And tell him their armor is not as strong as they think." When Sketh learned that his scouts were dead, he was furious. He had expected the humans to run or surrender. Instead, they had struck first. This was not supposed to happen. "Full assault," he ordered. "All warriors. Charge formation. Destroy them all." 490 Vethrani warriors formed into a massive wedge and began marching toward the human positions. The ground shook under their clawed feet. They looked like a tide of death rolling across the plain. On the ridge, Captain Yoon watched them come. "Steady," he told his archers. "Let them get closer." Shin Yuna stood in the front rank of crossbow soldiers. Her weapon was loaded and ready. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She had trained for this moment. The Vethrani reached the 500-meter mark. "Longbows fire at will," Yoon commanded. 100 archers released their arrows together. The longbows sang. 100 shafts arced through the sky in a deadly rain dot. The Vethrani looked up in confusion. What were these strange sticks flying toward them? Then the arrows arrived. 20 Vethrani fell in the first volley. The arrows punched through armor, through limbs, through eyes. Screams of pain and surprise echoed across the field. Again, Yoon ordered Dot another volley. Another 20 fell. The Vethrani kept charging. They were brave warriors. They did not retreat from battle. But more arrows kept falling, and falling, and falling. Dot, by the time they reached 300 meters, over 100 Vethrani were down. The ground behind them was littered with bodies and broken arrows. "Crossbows," Yoon ordered. "Fire." Shin Yuna pulled her trigger. Her bolt flew true and hit a Vethrani warrior in the center of his chest. He crashed to the ground and did not rise. 200 crossbows fired in rapid succession. The heavier bolts did even more damage than the arrows. Vethrani warriors were thrown backward by the impacts. Their armor cracked and shattered. Dot at 200 meters. Sketh finally understood. These were not toys. These were weapons. Terrible weapons that killed without mercy. "Fall back," he shouted. "Fall back." The Vethrani retreated, dragging their wounded with them. They left 40 dead on the field. The human casualties were 0. On the ridge, the human soldiers did not cheer. They reloaded their weapons and watched the enemy withdraw. This was not a victory celebration. This was a warning. Captain Yoon turned to Sergeant Major Choi. "Casualty report. 8 wounded, sir. Minor injuries only. 43 confirmed enemy kills, possibly more." You nodded. "Good, but that was just the first test. Sketh is smart enough to learn from this. He will not charge blindly again. What will he do? He will try night attacks, flanking maneuvers. He will try to find our weaknesses." Yoon looked at the setting sun. "Tonight will be dangerous. Double the watch. Light the warning fires. And prepare the stakes." As darkness fell over Arena 6, the humans continued to build their defenses. Sharpened stakes surrounded their position. Tripwires connected to bells and flares. Fire pits were prepared for quick lighting. The Vethrani watched from a distance, licking their wounds and planning their next move. Their pride was hurt. Their confidence was shaken. But they were not defeated. War leader Sketh stared at the human position with new respect. These creatures were more dangerous than anyone had expected. But surely they could not survive a sustained assault. Surely they would run out of arrows eventually. He would wait for the right moment. He would find their weakness. He would destroy them. He did not yet understand that he was facing 10,000 years of military evolution. He did not yet understand that humans were the most persistent, the most creative and the most deadly hunters in the galaxy, he would learn. But by then, it would be too late. The old military base had been empty for 50 years. Now it was alive with activity. Soldiers ran across the training grounds. Trucks brought in strange cargo from museums around the world. And in the center of it all stood Captain Yoon, watching his impossible plan take shape. Lieutenant Hana walked beside an old man with white hair and strong hands. His name was Baek Ji-won, and 60 years ago, he had won an Olympic gold medal in archery. Now he was being asked to teach soldiers how to kill with bows and arrows. "This is madness," Baek said, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "Beautiful madness. Can you do it?" Yoon asked. "Can you teach 500 soldiers to shoot in 3 months?" Baek laughed. "I taught children to hit targets at 70 meters in 6 months. Soldiers are more disciplined than children, and you do not need them to be perfect. You just need them to be dangerous." He picked up a longbow from a nearby table. It was a replica of a medieval English warbow, 6 feet tall and made of modern composite materials. The draw weight was over 100 pounds. "This," Baek said, pulling the string back with practiced ease, "could put an arrow through plate armor at 200 meters. The English used these to destroy French knights at Agincourt. Thousands of armored men died in minutes." He released the string. The bow hummed with power. "The Vethrani have natural armor," Baek continued. "But our ancestors faced armored enemies too. They solved that problem centuries ago." Across the training ground, another group was assembling something much larger. Dr. Oh Seung-ho, a military historian from Seoul National University, was directing the construction of a trebuchet. The massive wooden arm rose 15 meters into the air. "This design is from the 13th century," Dr. Oh explained to the watching soldiers. "It could throw a 300-kilogram stone over 500 meters. Castles that had stood for centuries fell to these machines." A young soldier named Shin Yuna stepped forward. She was small, barely over 5 feet tall, but her eyes were fierce. "Can it really throw that far?" "Watch," Dr. O said. The crew loaded a practice stone into the sling. They released the counterweight. The arm swung up with terrifying speed. The stone flew through the air in a high arc and crashed into a target bunker half a kilometer away. The bunker collapsed. The soldiers stared in silence. "We will build 10 of these," Dr. O said calmly. "And we will also build smaller catapults, ballistae, and scorpions. The Romans conquered the known world with these weapons. We will use them to save our people." Shin Yuna raised her hand again. "What about close combat? What if they get past the arrows and the siege weapons?" A new voice answered. "Then we kill them with these." Sergeant Major Choi Yoonbai walked into the training area. She was a tall woman with scars on her arms and the look of someone who had survived many battles. In her hands, she carried a collection of medieval weapons: swords, spears, war hammers, and flails. "The Vethrani have armor," Choi said. "But armor has weaknesses: joints, eyes, gaps between plates." She held up a war hammer. This weapon was designed to kill armored knights. The spike goes through the armor. The hammer crushes what is inside. She demonstrated on a training dummy wearing replica Vethrani armor. The spike punched through the shell with a crack that made everyone wince. "We also have this," she continued, picking up a strange weapon. It was a long handle with a spiked ball attached by a chain. "The Pyongan, a Korean war flail. It swings around shields and reaches past defenses. Very effective against any target." For the next 3 months, the base became a school for ancient warfare. Soldiers who had trained with rifles and lasers learned to draw longbows. Engineers who had built starships learned to construct trebuchets. Tactics officers who had planned space battles learned the formations of Roman legions and Mongolian cavalry. It was not easy. Muscles that had never been used screamed in protest. Fingers bled from bowstrings. Soldiers collapsed from exhaustion, but they did not quit. Lieutenant Hana became one of the best students. She discovered that she had a natural talent for the crossbow. Modern versions of the ancient weapon used carbon fiber and advanced pulleys, but they were still powered by human muscle. Her crossbow had a draw weight of 400 kilograms and could fire a bolt that would punch through starship hull plating. The treaty says no chemical propellants, she told Captain Yoon during a training session, but it says nothing about mechanical advantage. Springs and levers are permitted. So we have built crossbows that are more powerful than ancient cannons. She demonstrated by firing at a target made of Vethrani armor samples. The bolt went through the front, through the training dummy inside, and out the back. Yoon nodded with satisfaction. And the siege weapons? Dr. O has improved the designs using modern engineering. The trebuchets are more accurate than the originals. The ballistae can fire bolts that explode on impact using chemical compounds that do not count as propellants under the treaty terms. Fire and impact explosives? Simple chemistry. Flasks of flammable oil. Clay pots filled with material that ignites when broken. The same weapons that were used in ancient sieges. As the weeks passed, the soldiers transformed. Their arms grew thick with muscle from drawing bows. Their hands grew calloused from handling weapons. Their minds grew sharp from studying ancient tactics. Shin Yuna became especially skilled. She could fire her crossbow with deadly accuracy while moving at a full run. The other soldiers started calling her Ghost Arrow because her bolts seemed to appear from nowhere. One evening, as the sun set over the training ground, a Vethrani diplomatic ship passed overhead. It was permitted under the treaty terms. They were probably checking on human preparations. The soldiers looked up at the ship with grim determination. "Let them look," Sergeant Major Choi said. "They will see people playing with sticks and stones. They will laugh. They will tell their warriors that victory is certain." "And when the battle comes?" Shin Yuna asked. "When the battle comes, they will discover that our sticks and stones are the most refined killing tools in the history of the galaxy. They will learn what our ancestors learned thousands of years ago. The human body may be weak, but the human mind is the most dangerous weapon ever created." Above them, the Vethrani ship disappeared into the clouds. Captain Yoon watched it go with cold eyes. "2 more weeks," he said. "Then we show them what humans can really do." The soldiers cheered and returned to their training with renewed energy. Arrows flew. Siege weapons launched. Blades sang through the air. Somewhere across the stars, Vethrani warriors were sharpening their claws and practicing their charges. They were confident in their natural weapons. They had won 100 battles with those claws. They had no idea that they were about to face the most creative killers in the known universe. Humanity had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill without technology. Now they would demonstrate that terrible knowledge. The trial by combat was coming, and humanity was ready. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with beings from 100 different worlds. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some were made of living crystal. But today, all eyes were on the 2 groups standing in the center of the chamber. On one side stood the Vethrani delegation. They were tall creatures, almost 8 feet high, with hard black shells covering their bodies like natural armor. Their eyes were red and cold. Their claws could cut through steel. For 200 years, they had been one of the most feared species in the galaxy. On the other side stood the humans. They looked small and soft compared to the Vethrani. No armor, no claws, no natural weapons at all. Many of the watching aliens felt sorry for them. Captain Yoon Tae-min stood at the front of the human group. He was a man in his 40s, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him stood Lieutenant Park Hana, a woman with sharp features and an even sharper mind. She held a datapad and was recording everything. Ambassador Quan Duhan stepped forward. He was an older man with a gentle face that hid a brilliant tactical mind. He had been negotiating with alien species for 30 years. "We are here to end the war," Ambassador Quan said. His voice was steady. "The Vethrani Dominion has agreed to settle our territorial dispute through traditional means." The Vethrani leader moved forward. High Arbiter Molith was the largest of his kind in the room. His shell was covered with battle scars, and his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Yes," Molith said. "We will settle this the old way. The honorable way. A trial by combat." A murmur went through the watching crowd. Trial by combat was an ancient Vethrani tradition. They had used it for thousands of years to defeat weaker species without wasting resources on long wars. "The terms are simple," Molith continued. He seemed almost happy. "Each side will send 500 warriors to a neutral planet. They will fight until one side is destroyed or surrenders. No advanced weapons are permitted." Lieutenant Hana leaned close to Captain Yoon. "Sir, this is a trap. Without our guns and ships, we cannot match their natural weapons." Yoon said nothing. He just watched. "The definition of advanced weapons," Mollis said, "is anything that uses electrical power, chemical propellants, or energy projection. Your guns, your lasers, your bombs, all forbidden. Only simple weapons are allowed." The aliens in the crowd began to whisper. Everyone knew what this meant. Humans were weak creatures who depended on their technology. Without it, they would be helpless against Vethrani claws and armor. Ambassador Quan stroked his chin thoughtfully. "And if we win?" Molith made a sound that might have been laughter. "If you win, you keep your colonies. We will withdraw from your space forever. But when we win, all human settlements in the disputed zone become Vethrani property." "The stakes are acceptable," Ambassador Quan said. Captain Yoon finally spoke. His voice was quiet but carried through the hall. "I have a question about the weapons." Molith looked down at the human with contempt. "Ask. Mechanical weapons are permitted? Things powered by muscle and simple machines?" "Of course," Molith said. "Springs, levers, tension. These are primitive things. You may use whatever simple tools you can build." Yoon nodded slowly. A small smile appeared on his face. Lieutenant Hana saw that smile and felt confused. Why was her captain smiling? They were about to fight monsters with their bare hands. "We accept your terms," Ambassador Quan announced. The hall erupted in noise. Some aliens were shocked. Others were already placing bets on how quickly the humans would die. The Vethrani delegation looked pleased with themselves. As they left the council chamber, Hana grabbed Yoon's arm. "Captain, with respect, have you lost your mind? Their warriors have natural armor that can stop bullets. Their claws can tear through metal. How are we supposed to fight them with sticks and stones?" Yoon stopped walking. He turned to face her with that same small smile. "Lieutenant, how old is human civilization?" "About 10,000 years, sir." "And how long have we had guns and electricity?" Hana thought about it. "Maybe 400 years. "Correct. So what do you think we were doing for the other 9,600 years? Hana's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. "We were killing each other," Yoon said. "We were very, very good at it. We spent thousands of years perfecting the art of putting sharp objects into other living things. The Vethrani think they have taken away our weapons. They have no idea that they have just forced us to use the weapons we spent millennia mastering." Ambassador Quan joined them. Despite the serious situation, he was also smiling. The Vethrani evolved with natural armor and claws. They never needed to develop weapons. They think primitive means weak. But humans evolved weak, Hana said slowly, finally understanding. We had no claws, no armor. So we had to build weapons just to survive. Exactly, Yoon said. We invented the bow and arrow, the crossbow, the catapult, the trebuchet. Weapons that could kill at distance. Weapons that could punch through any armor. We fought wars with these tools that killed millions. He started walking again, his stride now full of purpose. Contact Earth Command. Tell them to open the military museums. Find me every historian who specializes in medieval warfare. And start recruiting soldiers who are willing to learn the old ways. Hannah hurried to keep up with him. How long do we have? 3 months until the trial begins. Can we train an army in 3 months? Yoon glanced back at her. Our ancestors learned these skills as children. We have the knowledge of 1,000 years of warfare preserved in books and recordings. And we have something the Vethrani do not understand. What is that, sir? Desperation? He pushed through the doors into the bright corridor beyond. Humans do their best work when our backs are against the wall. The Vethrani think they have cornered us. They think we are helpless. They have made a terrible mistake. Behind them, through the closing doors, they could hear the Vethrani celebrating their coming victory. They were already dividing up the human colonies among themselves. They had no idea what was coming. Captain Yoon pulled out his communicator and connected to Earth. This is Captain Yoon Tae-min. Authorization code 77 Alpha. I need to speak with High Command immediately. Tell them to dust off the history books. We are going to war the old-fashioned way. As the message transmitted across the stars, Yoon allowed himself one moment to appreciate the irony. The Vethrani wanted to fight without advanced weapons. They wanted primitive combat. They were about to learn that no species in the galaxy had more experience with primitive warfare than humanity. For thousands of years, humans had been killing each other with tools made of wood and steel and stone. They had perfected the art. Now they would demonstrate that art to the galaxy. The Vethrani had made their challenge. Humanity would answer it.